I'd like to start this post by saying that I understand that this subreddit is for ghost stories. This is not a ghost story. This is a story for me to be remembered by. I'm not writing this for your entertainment. I'm writing this as a warning. A warning that no one that has seen this will make the same mistake as I did. The story begins about 6 months ago. Sometime in December, I, 19, was in my freshman year of college. I was going to a small community college in a neighboring town. I was a pretty normal guy, not into the oogie boogie stuff in the slightest. Hell, I didn't even discover this subreddit thing till about a week ago. Moving along, I spent a lot of time on my computer, which made sense considering I was an aspiring programmer at the time, when one day I had purpled all the links in my favorite subreddits, and I thought, what else can I do? So I went on to Craigslist, which I'd been on maybe 2 times before. I was looking at categories and thinking that I may want to make some extra cash by cutting someone's lawn or something like that. So I began to scroll through the help wanted post when I happened to come across one that was only a few days old. The ad said, looking for an assistant to help with psychology studies, no experience required, needs to be open-minded and creative, paying $100 an hour for 1-hour sessions. I thought to myself, $100 per hour? So I jumped on it, considering myself creative and open-minded. After I sent the text message to the man, the ad, I felt a bit of apprehension reading the ad over and over. I started leaning towards this was one of those old men who want sexual favors from minors, but before I could let my mind wander any further, I received a reply, which has been deleted since then, but it basically told me that I need to be okay with a few psychological experiments. He'll just tell me to think of something and do it. That is all. I asked, what is he going to do with me? Still thinking of this guy's a pervert, but he told me it is crucial to the experiment that I don't know until he sees me in person. Now at this point, I practically know the guy's a creep, but for $100 an hour, with the possibility of multiple sessions, as a broke college kid, I didn't care. What these guys' motives were, I just wanted the dough, so I agreed to meet him the next day in the office. The next day I'd arrive at the address, and what a surprise! It wasn't even an office at all. It was a small rundown house, not surprised at all. I approached the house and knocked on the door. Almost instantly, the older man, probably in his late 50s, early 60s, opened the door. He looked pretty friendly and clean, surprisingly. Wearing a nice button-up, he told me, come on in. Sure, I could overpower him if it came down to it. I obliged. I sat down on the living room couch while he dragged a dining room chair in the middle of the room, directly in front of me. He began to chat with me. What do you do? What are your hobbies? What are you majoring in? Things along those lines. I suppose he was trying to get to know me for better results for the experiment. While we were chatting, I felt as if Mr. John was sincerely intrigued with me. And before I knew it, his digital watch began to beep. He pulls out his wallet and gives me a crisp $100 bill. It says he'd be looking forward to my appointment tomorrow. I smile, say thanks, and walk into my car. On my way home, I'm in disbelief. I look down at the $100 bill. It was just sitting on my lap. It can't be real, I thought. There's no way that much money was that easy. But it was real, and it was that easy. The next day was a bit different. Mr. John told me that he would like to begin his experiments today. Once I arrived, it was the same routine. I sit on the couch, Mr. John sits in his chair, and, he tells me that he will leave and he wants me to just imagine myself sitting in this chair. I think to myself of, you can't be serious. But he was. He left the room, and I tried to honor his request by just thinking of what I look like and trying to imagine it's sitting in the chair. I can hear a beep from Mr. John's watch come from the other room. He walks back from wherever he was, $100 bill in hand, hands it to me, and shows me out. This goes for the rest of the week, and by Sunday I had $600. Monday, Mr. John asked me for some questions about me sitting in the chair. His first question was, has it become easier? And it had. Much easier, actually. In a weird way, almost like I could get really into it and feel like I'm not only sitting on the couch, but sitting in the chair as well. So I told him, and he seemed very pleased. He got excited and said, "Can you see him yet?" I gave him a weird look and answered a questioning tone, "No?" That wiped the smile right off Mr. John's face, and he replied in disappointment, "Oh." He told me to spend the rest of my hour visualizing myself in the chair, which I did with ease, so I collected my $100 and continued on my way. Monday had become the interview day for me and Mr. John, and as time passed, I began to understand what he meant by, "Do you see him?" I think I did. At first it was like, I think I see it if I just gaze at the chair, but it wasn't for like an entire month that I was confident enough to believe that I can physically see myself sitting in the chair. And I did. It had been for a while, but I didn't want to believe because it was creeping me out. When I finally told John this, he was enthusiastic. He said that he wants me to begin to try to communicate with myself. He said I need not to speak aloud, so that's what I did. At first, it was just me asking myself questions in my head and only getting an answer if I decided to answer them. But I kept on, and eventually, I would just answer them without thinking about it. That's when it happened. I asked myself a very personal question about a girl that I've been crushing on when I saw myself in the chair. Then its lips moved and answered me. I heard the answer audibly. I screamed and jumped off the couch. More scared than I've ever been. John rushed in and said, "It happened, didn't it?" I told him that I spoke to me and I could hear it. John looked like he'd felt sorry for me and handed me the money and told me I could go home and that he's sorry I got frightened. The next day, John told me that the version of me that I see in the chair is my subconscious, and that I communicated with it for my first time yesterday. He said that it scared me because I didn't feel like the one answering my own question. But John told me it was all me. It was just a part of my brain that I'm not conscious of. What used to scare me had instantly turned into the most interesting thing I'd ever heard. John explained to me that our subconscious holds a lot of forgotten memories, much more than our conscious mind does. He said he wants me to communicate with it. At this point, I want to communicate with it myself. I became obsessed, not only imagining myself at John's anymore. Oh no, I'm imagining myself every time I have free time. I can do it without trying too hard now, and if I ask a question, I'll sometimes get an answer. So I practice and practice. Until one day, I go to Mr. John's like always, and he's not there. His car isn't there, so I assume that there must be some emergency or something, and he forgot to tell me to come. So I text him. It's nighttime now. He still hasn't replied. I get worried. I've grown fond of Mr. John, so I send lots of texts, and only when I call to discover his cell phone's off. I drive out there for a few days, still nothing. Oh, I forgot to mention, by this time, my avatar, as I will call it for this story, is with me constantly now. I don't have to think about it at all at this point. He's just there, and if I forgot something, I can think about asking my avatar, and he'll hear the answer. This goes on for a while. I don't tell anyone, for the obvious reasons. It has been about 2 weeks since I've heard from John, and I've pretty much given up. And this is the part where the story goes south. I was in my room, playing some World of Warcraft, when my mom starts to nag me to take out the trash. But I'm in a raid, so I tell her she's gonna have to wait a minute. This makes her mad because she doesn't understand that other people are depending on me, so she enters my room and unplugs the router and tells me to go, pointing towards the kitchen. I start to get up when my avatar becomes furious. He begins to curse like a sailor, calling my mother fat bitch. I stare. My mother asks if I'm alright, and I reply yes, and I walk into the kitchen. My avatar follows. He is asking why I put up with that shit. I tell him that she's my mother and I love her. She didn't know better. He quiets down but still looks heated. That night, I was awoken by my avatar calling my name. He's standing at the foot of my bed. Shocked that he has the ability to wake me up, I ask what he wants. He says, I want to kill your mother. I freak the fuck out. I scream, no! Mom comes rushing in. What's the matter, honey? Crying, I say, bad dream. Mom says she's sorry and that she's gonna go back to bed. I try to make my avatar go away, but he won't. He just stands there with a menacing grin on his face. So I ask him, why would I ever want to do that? This makes him angry. He yells and screams at me, but I think to myself that he can never hurt me. Boy, I was wrong. He knew what I was thinking. He is me. And he tells me, I am you. Are you capable of hurting you? After he says that, I'm overwhelmed with all the most horrid emotions at once. Despair, hopelessness, sorrow. I stay up all night. Life goes on. Every time I don't do what he tells me, the depression comes back. But I'm a trooper, and I deal with this the best I can. Still not letting anyone in, until one day, I'm laying in my bed texting my crush, and my avatar is sitting on the floor, spouting things off like, why don't you just go to her, and place, and fuck her, you faggot. I ignore it, and the depression sets in. He says that he'll make it go away if I take the thumbtack sitting on my desk and stab it into my hand. If you've ever experienced depression before, you'll understand why this is such a great deal. So I do it, and I feel normal again. My avatar quiets down. This becomes a routine. He asks me to go do something bad. I don't do it. I get depressed. He tells me to do self-harm. I do it, and he goes away. I've taken apart an old razor from a shaving razor and keep it in my drawer by my bed. And he tells me what to cut to make it stop, and more often than not, he doesn't look like me at all anymore. He's much taller than me. He's much stronger looking than me. He's pale, white, pointed teeth, always smiling. His proportions are all wrong. His arms and legs hang down to his kneecaps, and his back is hunched. But the worst part is his eyes. He has none. Just portals into the blackest I've ever seen. He stands in the corner as I type this, telling me he wants me to kill myself this time. Okay, this is my follow-up on the story I just read. It's really amazing because this isn't a big pasta I just found on a website. This is one that was the author actually sent and said, hey, can you narrate this for me? And there's gonna be a link to his channel, the little end thingy. I think it's like zibracakes or something. Zibracakes95. There we go. That was creative, by the way. It was very well written. I've actually heard a story that was similar to it. I forgot what it was called. He said that that's what it was based off of, but it was really well put together. It was the longest one I've ever done. And because when I said that, hey, you can send a pasta my way, I was expecting crap at first. and this was not crap. This was a very well put together pasta. You had to bear my narration because that's the longest one I ever did, and I had to redo it so many times from stuttering. It's crazy. But I hope you liked it as much as I did, because I thought it was amazing, especially for an amateur writer and stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna leave, and thanks.